The air crackled with displaced energy as Voyd's portal ripped open the fabric of reality above one of Aurora City's buildings. A triangle of upside-down blue shimmered against the backdrop of its befallen storm. Rain hammered the city like a relentless drumbeat against the symphony of urban life. The whir of cars, the impatient blare of horns, and the bustling life of civilians filled the streets. The faint glow of the moon, stubbornly clinging to existence, bled through the grimy, black-colored clouds. With a powerful leap, propelled by the portal's energy, Voyd landed heavily on the rain-slicked rooftop. His shoes skidded against the wet cement, forcing him to dig in his heels to avoid tumbling over the ledge. Whoa! Okay, that's not where I wanted to enter, he muttered, his heart hammering against his ribs. The dizzying view of the city sprawled below sent a shiver of dread down his spine.
Silly Heights!
Jet's voice chimed in, bringing Voyd back to that fateful day. It was only for a second, but he recalled the plummet from the dragon. It sent a shiver through his very core. Did you seriously just ask me that? Voyd retorted, turning away from the view and surveying his surroundings. He had materialized on the city's more affluent side. Towering skyscrapers adorned with pulsating neon signs pierced the stormy sky. The blinding lights created a vibrant, almost surreal atmosphere in the downpour. The sheer density of the crowds offered a degree of anonymity, a cloak of invisibility Voyd desperately needed. Okay, where are you? He reached up and tapped the side of his helmet. A low hum emanated as a scan with a range of 10 miles, according to the sensor display. For a fleeting moment, the visor screen flashed a warning red, then settled into a steady blue, overlaid with a holographic image and coordinates. The being of his search was identified as a monochrome, appeared to be holed up in a junkyard, located in the run-down southern sector of Aurora's clearly divided community. There you are. Voyd sighed as he raised his blaster and fired another portal, this one calculated to drop him precisely near the junkyard's perimeter. Withdrawing the weapon back into his arm brace, he yanked the hood of his sweater over his helmet. Can't let the people see me. Can't cause a scene again. He reminded himself. Exposure meant panic. Panic meant mission compromised. He took a few tentative steps, passing from the skyscraper's roof through the portal and into the dingy alleyways beside a restaurant proclaiming itself as Gilbert's Burger Corner. Ugh, gross. Voyd huffed as the stench of stale, greasy meat hung heavy in the air, venting in through his helmet. He quickly whirled around and shoved his hands deep into the pockets of his pants, picking up his pace on the less populated sidewalk. A few pedestrians crossed his path, but those who did cast long, questioning glances his way. Voyd was noticeably shorter than the inhabitants of this world. Though hidden beneath his clothes, he could feel their stares, the silent questions swirling around him. It made him profoundly uneasy. He had no allies, no one he could trust. He was a walking magnet for unwanted attention, and it was never the good kind. He pressed on. He saw a group of friends playing basketball despite the rain and time, their laughter echoing for all they hear. Voyd paused, a pang of longing hitting him as a wave of memories arose in his head. Memories of a better time. Then he thought, no distractions. Gotta stop it before I'm too late. Find the portal. Take the beast out. His gaze snagged on a glowing window to his left then. Inside, he saw a family on a couch, watching a Friday night movie. A mother, a father, and two kids who appeared to be twins. They were engrossed in its story, their laughter a comforting counterpoint to the storm raging outside. Voyd's stern expression softened, replaced by a flicker of yearning. The scene evoked half-forgotten memories of warmth and togetherness, of a time when he cut the thought off, squeezing his eyes shut. Keep moving. No distractions, he whispered to himself. With a deep breath, he turned away from the window and trudged onwards, the dim sign of the junkyard shimmering in the distance. Leaping over a gated fence with a sign saying Salty's Parts, he landed on the other side with a muddy splash. A surge of tension coursed through him. With clenched fists, he straightened up to his full height and gently pulled the hood back, revealing his helmet into the dimly lit, rain-soaked world. "Now, where are you?" he whispered, stepping into the maze of decaying cars. Rusting hulks lay in heaps, crushed and stacked with brutal indifference, looking like monuments to a forgotten past. This place was on its last legs, barely clinging to existence. The endless rain beat against the corroded metal, creating a symphony of soft taps and echoes. The sound pricked at Voyd's senses, a persistent drumming that threatened to unravel his focus. It was then he saw it. To his right, a shimmering distortion of red, surrounded by spider webs of white glass-like cracks, coalesced into a static-ridden portal. "The tear," he breathed. "Gotta find and destroy the creature to seal it up. It's already burning bright." He added, "These tears in reality were the bane of his existence. He had to find the source, the monster that followed in their wake." "I know you're here!" Voyd shouted, slowly turning on his heel. Taking measured steps, he navigated the labyrinth of decaying vehicles. Squinting against the rain and mist, he strained his senses, feeling the weight of unease dawn upon him. Each footstep sounded like a branch snapping in a silent forest. Every drop of rain seemed magnified, echoing like a bell chime that wouldn't let up on a Sunday morning. His senses heightened, his nerves stretched. Voyd channeled the energy deep within him. The air around his helmet shimmered, swirling patterns of blue light emanating from his very being. "Show yourself!" Voyd huffed, trying to taunt the creature he knew lurked nearby. At that moment, the sky ripped open with a blinding flash of lightning, both loud and powerful. The golden light illuminated the junkyard, casting stark shadows of the stacked cars upon Voyd's form. He winced, trying to shield his eyes from the flashes of lightning that illuminated the grimy cityscape. But now, according to his helmet's tracker, the monochrome, it had vanished. "Huh?" Voyd huffed, his eyes darting around the chaotic landscape, searching for any sign of the glitch. Where'd it go? Jet, what happened?" Voyd asked, his tone shifting with worry.
It would appear the glitch's life signal has moved on from this area.
Jet explained, the Voyd's troubled senses.
I'm detecting that it departed not too long ago.
Voyd was baffled. "Well, where would it..." His question was cut short by an unexpected impact. A newspaper, caught within the storm, slapped him squarely in the face. "Gah!" he gasped, pulling the soggy paper away. "What the..." He held it at arm's length, its ink-smeared surface barely legible in the dim light. "A&N Daily," screamed the headline in bold black letters. Below, a blurry photograph depicted a cloaked figure, a glowing seeming to erupt from their outstretched hands. The caption read, "Aurora's Phantom, Hero or Threat," written by Mason Sato. Aurora's Phantom? Voyd asked aloud. The name piqued his curiosity, but his attention was immediately yanked back to the mission from Jet's words.
"Glitch detected,"
he announced, urgency lacing his normally calm tone. Voyd refocused himself, adrenaline surging through him. He shot his arms outwards, the sleeves of his worn sweater expanding apart to reveal sleek metallic extensions. The long arms, glinting in the storm's harsh light, snaked out and latched onto a stack of rusting cars. With a powerful tug, Voyd hauled himself up, scrambling to the top. Landing, he surveyed the city from his elevated vantage point. There, in the distance, the glitch's marker pulsed ominously on Jet's display. It was located on the gargantuan bridge, the sprawling structure that spanned nearly the width of the city itself. Its roadways were crowded with slowly moving vehicles. A cold chill snaked down Voyd's spine. "Oh no! No!" he breathed, his voice tight with dread. He tensed his muscles, preparing to unleash his unique abilities. From his back, A faint spark of blue energy flickered and faded. He gritted his teeth. Come on! Come on! He urged, struggling to summon his wings. The very thing he needed, but was only met with nothing. Crap! He gasped, his frustration mounting. He couldn't wait any longer. He shot his metallic arms out again, this time latching on 2 nearby telephone poles. Bracing himself, he pulled back with all his might, then released, launching himself forwards in a desperate, high-speed trajectory towards the bridge. The bridge throbbed with the frustration of gridlock. Cars, bumper to bumper, were trapped in the heavy downpour that lashed across the city. Rain hammered against the roof of a beat-up pickup truck, its faded paint barely concealing the rust creeping beneath. Inside, driving, was Cot. Sitting beside him was Jamie, radiating a nonchalant coolness. She lit a cigarette, its cherry tip glowing in the dim interior as she exhaled a plume of smoke through a crack in the window. I hope Nock didn't chew Jaida out all too much, Jamie said, her voice a low murmur. Poor girl's been having it rough lately. She glanced at Cot, who mirrored her look. Nock's a big softy. Even when he's mad, I'm sure he's giving her some lecture on responsibility. I guarantee you they hugged it out. Cot replied, inching the truck forwards in a futile attempt to gain ground. Maybe, but he seemed extra grumpy today. Can't believe that one dude came in with only 2 wheels. Now that I think about it, I don't blame Nock for being that upset. Jamie added, flicking ash out the window and into the swirling rain. Dragging his bumper and everything. Honestly, it's quite ridiculous that we have to head to the northern side to grab these polishing supplies this late into the night. And again, he did scrape up the floors pretty bad. Cot groaned, the sound muffled by the drumming rain. Yeah, tell me about it, he said. Hey, don't worry, little brother. We'll be in and out like always, Jamie assured him, a playful glint in her eye. I'm fairly certain I'm the older brother, Jamie. Cot retorted, a flicker of exasperation crossing his features. Pretty sure my adoption papers were filled out before yours, Jamie countered, a smirk playing on her lips. Jamie, I'm still older than you, Cot sputtered, throwing her a baffled side glance. Not in the legal system of the adoption process, she said, punctuating her statement by flicking the water around Cot's floating upside-down head. Sure. Suddenly, a violent tremor ran through the bridge. The massive cables groaned and shuddered. Cars rocked on their suspensions, and a collective gasp rose from the trapped motorists. Whoa! What the hell? Cot exclaimed, leaning towards the window, straining to see through the rain. Ruptures of blinding light erupted from the bridge's surface, throwing cars aside and causing them to tilt precariously over glowing cracks. Panic seized the traffic. People abandoned their vehicles, scrambling to escape whatever was happening. Cot? What the heck is happening? Jamie asked, her voice laced with nervousness. Cot desperately checked his mirrors, searching for a way to back out, but the fleeing crowds had blocked any escape. Cars were left abandoned, doors ajar, hazard lights blinking uselessly in the downpour. Oh, you've got to be kidding me, Cot muttered, unbuckling his seatbelt. Cot, what's happening? Jamie repeated, her apprehension growing as the rumbling and metallic grinding of shifting vehicles continued. I don't know, but I think we should follow the others, Cot said, just as another more intense surge of energy raced across the bridge. This time, a shockwave of static electricity slammed into everything, causing lights to flicker and short-circuit vehicles. The truck's electrical system sputtered and died, the doors locking with a resounding click, jamming. Hey! The door's jacked up! Jamie cried, frantically tugging on the handle. Oh no, no. Kot shouted, his eyes wide with alarm. They were trapped. Drawn back towards the origin of the chaos, they watched in horrified fascination as a figure began to materialize from the rent in reality. Emerging in a levitating pose, a being of impossible geometry solidified before them. It was tall and unnervingly lanky, its form radiating a cold gray light. Monochromatic pulses throbbed within its core, illuminating limbs that were long, sharp, and seemingly made of burning light. Plates of obsidian-like stone encased its body, giving the impression of armor. Its head, sharp and pointed with a backwards crest, was concealed within a sharp helmet of the same dark material. Shark-like teeth glinted in the flickering light, and beady white eyes stared out from beneath the helmet. A square-eyed emblem in the shape of a diamond was chiseled into its forehead. As it fully materialized, it extended its arms, its hands outstretched, and began to absorb the surrounding light, plunging the bridge into a deeper shadow of flickering strobes. What the? Kot gasped, his voice barely audible above the storm. Suddenly, a figure landed with a resounding thud on the hood of their truck, startling both Kot and Jamie. Gah! Standing to his full height, the Voyd stood silhouetted against the chaotic spectacle, his eyes burning with righteous fury behind his visor. Everyone off the bridge! Now! He roared towards those that were still fleeing. With this, he summoned a shimmering blue Novarune and hurled it at the monochromatic figure. The Novarune struck the entity's head with a burst of blue energy, momentarily disrupting whatever power surge it was attempting. The creature spun in the air, snarling at Voyd as it rounded back about, who swiftly deployed his makeshift blades attached to his gauntlets.
Little sponge.
The monochrome figure growled, its voice a guttural rasp. Upon hearing this grotesque voice, Jamie shouted in fright. Voyd then turned around, his heart sinking. He saw the two people trapped directly in the line of fire, their faces illuminated by the eerie glow of the alien entity. God, open the doors! Jamie cried on, her voice filled with desperation. They locked eyes with Voyd's blue visor, their faces a mixture of shock and terror at the sight of what appeared to be a knight appearing in the middle of the chaos. The glitched entity behind Voyd emanated a guttural growl, a sound that vibrated in the air and sent his soul on edge. Oh no, he muttered, a knot of dread tightening in his stomach. Voyd whipped back around, his eyes widening at the sight before him. The monochrome figure was seizing, its form flickering erratically like a dying television screen. Suddenly, it thrust out a hand, its disjointed fingers twitching. Abandoned cars scattered across the bridge began to levitate, drawn towards the creature. It suddenly absorbed them into its glitching mass, a grotesque merging of the organic and inanimate. Then, as quickly, it rejected them, the hand outstretched again, now a weapon. The cars, now twisted and mangled, shot back into the world through portals, hurtling directly towards Voyd. A haunting, distorted scream ripped from the creature's non-existent throat, a sonic sound joined with the barrage of metal. One of the cars slammed into Voyd with brutal force, sending him flying. He crashed against the side of a van, the impact knocking the wind out of him and sending a jolt of pain through his body. He groaned, struggling to regain his bearings. Another vehicle careened out of control, smashing in the Kot and Jamie's truck. The force of the impact sent the truck careening towards the edge of the bridge, its front end smashing through the guardrail and teetering precariously over the abyss of water. Voyd scrambled to his feet, ignoring the throbbing pain in his ribs. He glared at the entity. Its monochrome form was now spinning, manipulating the thick cables that supported the bridge. With a sickening snap, the massive wires broke free, whipping through the air like enraged serpents. Voyd ducked and weaved, narrowly avoiding the snapping cables. Thinking fast, he aimed his gauntlet and fired a grappling hook. The hook snagged on one of the severed cables, and with a surge of energy, Voyd launched himself towards the glitching monster, using its swing as momentum. His legs extended, and he slammed into the creature, kicking it with all of his might and sending it tumbling across the bridge. They both crashed to the ground in a tangled heap. On the edges of the bridge, beyond the immediate chaos, people watched in stunned horror. Fear and confusion warred in their faces as they witnessed the impossible battle unfolding before them. Voyd surged to his feet, adrenaline coursing through his veins. He lunged towards the creature, drawing his blade. He descended upon it, ready to strike the final blow. But the entity reacted with unnerving speed, rolling out of the way just as Voyd's blade slammed into the asphalt. The creature floated back into the air, its form radiating an unnatural energy within the storm. A snarl twisted its features as it slashed its claws, creating a visible wave of energy that hurtled towards Voyd. He reacted instantly, summoning a Nova Rune. The rune deflected the attack, but the force of the impact pushed him back, staggering. As he struggled to maintain his balance, a chorus of panicked screams pierced the air. He heard Kot and Jamie, their voices filled with terror, as they desperately tried to escape the truck that was now slowly tilting over the ledge. Voyd's eyes widened in horror. He couldn't let them fall, but he couldn't ignore the monster either. The creature lashed out again, forcing him to evade a flurry of attacks. With a swift motion, Voyd reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, round device. Its surface gleamed with a faint white spark. It was a flashbang grenade, a tool of disorientation. He then hurled it at the entity. A blinding white light erupted, followed by a deafening bang. The creature recoiled, momentarily stunned. Seizing the opportunity, Voyd fired his grappling hook, snagging the rear bumper of the truck just before it slid completely over the ledge. He then slammed his gauntlet down, locking the cable in place by a Nova Rune. He then turned back to the fight, his heart pounding in his chest. The monochrome creature was recovering, its features twisted in a furious snarl. It slashed again, knocking Voyd off his feet. Once more, it surveyed its surroundings, its gaze lingering on the now thrown-up debris scattered across the bridge. With a malevolent intent, it levitated more cars and broken pieces of concrete, launching them at the young hero. As the battle raged on, 2 ANN news choppers appeared overhead, their spotlights cutting through the chaos and illuminating the scene. Onlookers continued to watch in shock and dread as Voyd weaved and countered each attack of the mysterious entity. Knocking Voyd back yet again, the entity turned its gaze on one of the helicopters, its form radiating an unsettling intensity. A sinister cackle then escaped its maws as it reached out with a telekinetic grasp, snagging one of the helicopters with ease. Voyd watched in disbelief as the creature pulled the vehicle down. 2 figures jumped out, their parachutes blossoming open, but that didn't stop what was coming. The helicopter blade, still spinning madly, was hurtled towards him. "Oh, come on!" Voyd yelled in panic, diving out of the way just as the craft smashed to the ground. The still spinning blades churned the asphalt, setting up a shower of sparks and debris. Without a pause, the entity struck again, its sharp spiked feet nearly impaling Voyd. They engaged in another desperate exchange of blows. Panic clawed at Voyd as he realized that the spinning helicopter blades were drawing closer. He was being pushed towards them. He needed a new plan, a way to turn the situation to his advantage. He needed to buy time. Looking down, his eyes fell on the Nova Rune and the grappling hook, tethered to the precariously dangling truck. A risky idea then formed in his mind. It was a desperate gamble, but it might just work. Disengaging the rune, Voyd quickly dove and grabbed his grappling wire. He swiftly detached it from the truck and swung it around, looping it around the glitching entity's body. For a moment, the creature seemed confused, its expression blank. It had no time to process what came next. "See ya," Voyd growled, throwing the cable into the whirling blades of the grounded helicopter. Instantly, the entity was yanked forwards, its form erupting into a spray of burning hot energy as the blades shredded it within an instant. The helicopter then exploded from the final blow, shaking the bridge and rocking everything upon it. The tremor from the blast finally dislodged the truck. Jamie and Kot screamed as the vehicle tumbled over the edge. Moving with lightning-fast speed, Voyd dove towards the falling truck, his arms extending and hands reaching out, grasping the back of the bumper. He slid towards the edge, his feet catching against the guardrail, nearly doing the splits as he braced himself. His arms extended down to their limits, but he caught them, albeit feeling a world of hurt. Grunting with the strain, Voyd slowly began to pull the vehicle back up. Every muscle in his body screamed in protest. Everyone watching was amazed at what they were seeing. The remaining news chopper captured the whole thing on camera. With each inch gained, Voyd could feel the weight grow heavier. He then shouted, his voice raw and strained as he heaved the truck upwards. Inch by inch, the vehicle was brought back to stable ground, and at last, to safety. Collapsing onto his rear, Voyd gasped for air, his lungs burning with exertion. The doors of the truck burst open with one hard panic kick, and Cot and Jamie stumbled out, their faces pale with pure fear and shock. They were alive, they were safe, and they looked at the young hero with gratitude in their eyes. You, Cot gasped, his voice trembling as he and his sister embraced each other. Thank you, he finished, his eyes brimming with emotion. Voyd looked up, his gaze meeting the astonished, scared yet intrigued eyes of the onlookers. Who are you? Jamie asked, her voice barely a whisper. You saved their lives! A man from the crowd exclaimed, breaking the stunned silence. You're a hero! Another voice added, the word echoing across the bridge. Voyd swallowed hard, a wave of unease washing over him. Without a word, he opened a shimmering portal beneath himself. The crowd gasped, their eyes wide with disbelief as Voyd vanished, his body falling through with the portal sealing shut moments after, leaving only a sea of chaos and disbelief across the bridge. The hero was gone, leaving behind only questions and the lingering echo of his incredible feat. The portal spat Voyd out unceremoniously, backwards and tumbling. He landed with a jarring thud, his back slamming against the sharp corner of an abandoned stage. A strangled yelp escaped from his lips as he pinwheeled forward, impacting the cold, unforgiving cement before rolling over the edge of what appeared to be a bowl ramp. The momentum carried him headfirst into a stagnant puddle, where he came to an abrupt, waterlogged halt. Groaning, Voyd slowly pushed himself back upright, clutching at his chest. Every breath sent a jolt of agony through his ribs. He gazed through his helmet visor, the heads-up display painting the scene in stark detail. An abandoned skate park, choked with burn marks and plastered with layers of faded graffiti. Voyd winced. He then hauled himself out of the murky ramp, water squelching in his shoes.
Voyd.
The calm, synthesized voice of Jet echoed in his ears.
I recommend that you rest and heal. I'm detecting several flesh wounds, torn metal slabs, and a punctured rib.
Voyd huffed. Yeah, I've noticed. The rain, a cold, persistent drizzle, soaked him to the bone. He turned and limped back towards the stage, seeking what little shelter its crumbling roof provided. Looking up, he could just make out the faded outlines of two figures spray-painted on the wall, a larger-than-life guitarist and a stylish drummer. He then slumped against his wall, sliding down until he sat heavily on the damp ground. Silence descended, broken only by the drumming of the rain and the distant hum of the city. His piercing blue eyes, the only source of light in the shadowed space, stared blankly ahead. Slowly, deliberately, he reached into his backpack and withdrew two items. The first was the now old and worn photograph. He and his family, their faces bright and carefree, before everything. Then he pulled out his teddy bear. One arm was missing, torn off long ago. One button eye was gone, leaving a patch of faded fur. But it was undoubtedly the same comforting presence that had been with him since he was a baby. He squeezed the plushie gently, A crackling speaker within then sputtered to life.
I love you, Voyd.
His mother's voice, warm and familiar, filled the small space. Voyd squeezed his eyes shut, feeling the sting of unshed tears. He leaned forwards, pressing his forehead against the bear's soft fur. He then sighed, a tired, ragged sound. I love you, too, Mom. He whispered, his voice barely audible. He then looked back up towards the distant city, its lights a glittering, mesmerizing blur against the storm clouds.
Beautiful, is it not, my friend?
Jed asked, his voice softened, coming through a calm in Voyd's armplate, trying to soothe him. The tear has been closed, Voyd replied, his voice flat, devoid of emotion.
No, unfortunately. It would seem there's another glitch somewhere in this city.
Jed's tone held a subtle note of nervousness, sensing Voyd's detachment. Voyd's brow furrowed. He carefully placed the photo and the teddy bear back into his bag. He stood, drawing in a sharp, painful breath.
Voyd, you're still injured. I reiterate my recommendation that you remain resting.
Jed exclaimed, his voice laced with concern. Voyd then deployed his helmet again, the familiar clank a mechanical counterpoint to the storm. I'll heal soon enough. If there's still one of those things out here, then we gotta find it.
Well, alright. If you find another computer to plug me into, I can run a much grainer scan like before. We can find it here and others across the stars. Maybe even a lead to the next realm.
The AI stated, a hint of apprehension in his voice. Voyd took another deep breath, his jaw tight. We're not leaving until we find it, no matter how long it takes. He shrugged off the pain as if it were nothing more than a minor inconvenience. I won't allow this place, any place, to end up like Salvaheim. He leapt up, landing lightly atop the chain-link fence that enclosed the park. For those we lost, and for those we honor, he said, his voice barely a whisper. He dropped to the ground on the other side of the fence and began the walk, his gait steady despite the pain that racked his body. As he began marching his way towards an alleyway, Jet sighed sadly, understanding more that he could ever express the burden that the young spark carried. Within the darkest depths of the universe, the vanished realm throbbed with a discordant energy. Above, a sky of bruised purples and clotted reds wept sluggish tears of lightning. Stars, distant and forlorn, seemed to mourn the fate of this forsaken place. Twisted trees gnawed inwards, as if recoiling from some unseen horror. Landmasses, islands of despair, drifted aimlessly, haunted by creatures born of nightmare and oblivion. It was a grotesque tapestry of decay and desperation, the home of the universe's unwanted beings. Yet, even in this abyss, a defiant light flickered. Amidst the swirling chaos, a kingdom, if it could be called such, clawed its way into existence. It was a grotesque monument of jagged crystal, towers of raw, uneven edges piercing the tormented sky. A constant static hum emanated from its crystalline structures, a visual symphony of fractured light. Colors, shifting and unstable, chased each other across its surfaces, reflecting the inner turmoil of its inhabitants. The citizens of this kingdom or that of the glitched beings, remnants, anomalies given form. Many acted on instinct, like wild animals, tearing at each other for scraps of energy for a moment of dominance. Others engaged in brutal sparring matches, honing the skills necessary to endure another day in this desolate realm to strike an innocent world. Inside the castle's unsettling halls, two figures moved with a purpose that matched the surrounding chaos. They were both glitched beings, yet strikingly different, like shards of a shattered mirror reflecting the same broken whole. One towered over the other, a lanky creature of shifting purples. A piercing green cyclopean eye blazed in front of a floating, octahedron-shaped head. 4 long, disjointed arms levitated around him, each one radiating with contained energy. Beside him, a shorter being of solid yellow crystal moved with sharp, deliberate steps. Her single, crimson eye burned with an intensity that contrasted with her smaller stature. Her body was a geometric nightmare, sharp angles flowing into a dress-like shape. Her 2 arms, strangely normal in comparison to her other features, were clasped tightly together, her head levitating as a pyramid. Together, they approached a massive crystal door. The structure groaned and disassembled itself piece by piece as they neared, allowing passage into the room beyond. This was no throne room of an opulent design. It was stark, almost empty. Tall columns of crystal supported the ceiling, their surfaces shimmering with internal fractures. Fine particles of energy drifted through the air, like lost souls searching for a home. Gentle fires, fueled by static energy, flickered on strategically placed torches, casting long, distorted shadows. In the distance, large windows offered a panoramic view of the banished realm's unending torment. However, the room's focal point was in its center. There, suspended in the air, floated a being of sharp, blood-red crystal, curled into a fetal position. The crystal limbs were tucked tight against the body, the head resting within the protective embrace. A radiant aura of crimson light enveloped the being, emanating a power contained within. Lord Lotus. The female glitch spoke, her voice a series of jagged clicks and hisses. Slowly, the being in the center stirred. A single, gleaming yellow eye, cyclopean in its intensity, snapped open. The iris bore the same angular symbol that adorned the helmet of the monochrome of all the glitched. With a series of grinding cracks and pops, Lotus unfolded himself, his limbs stretching, his body reforming into its true, terrifying form. Lotus was a towering figure of skeletal grace, sculpted from ruby crystal. Jagged shoulders and a spiked spine accented his imposing presence. Large, 3-fingered claws dripped with unseen energy. A cube-shaped head, the source of his unwavering glare, seemed to absorb and reflect the ambient light. Deep within his chest, a ball of yellow energy pulsed with an unknown power, dancing with an almost sentient light. Speak, Lotus commanded, his voice a guttural rasp that echoed through the chamber.
Master, we've lost several diamondbacks and another monochrome.
The purple glitch reported, his singular green eye flaring with agitation. Several higher gods taken out. The yellow one confirmed, her tone clipped and precise. Lotus drifted lazily to the floor, his gaze locking onto his subordinates with unyielding intensity.
Is this about the little runt?
He asked, his voice laced with a dangerous calm as he began to pace the room. Precisely. The yellow one replied, her crimson eye projecting a holographic image of Voyd, captured through the eyes of the now slain monochrome. The projection showed the bridge battle, the clash of energies, the child's desperate struggle and undeniable skill. The child has been tearing through our scouts day by day, emerging unscathed. If he continues on this path, he will inevitably find his way here. The yellow glitch continued, her voice betraying a hint of unease.
Solidius, Fracture, have you come to express your fears for this child?
Lotus inquired, his tone subtly mocking. Lotus then stalked closer to the image of Voyd, his singular yellow eye narrowing.
He is stranded in the mortal realm. He possesses no technology that could grant him access to the other worlds beyond it. The likelihood of him reaching us is very, very small.
He paused, his gaze hardening.
For every world he saves, 10 more succumb in its place. He is merely a boy, desperately trying to emulate his mommy's legacy.
Solidius, the yellow glitch, deactivated the hologram, her pyramid head tilting. That is precisely why we should be concerned. This child is the offspring of the Iron Maiden, the warrior who fought alongside Matira and Materoth to banish us from these realms. She gestured sharply towards Lotus. Need I remind you that they succeeded? Lotus rose a clawed hand and gently traced a deep, jagged crack on the right side of his cubed head. A scar from many years ago, a reminder of a past defeat, inflicted by a flail mace wielded by a woman he could never forget. This child carries her gift. Solidius finished, her voice heavy with unspoken dread.
Everyone speaks of this supposed gift the maiden possessed. What is it exactly? Some form of inherent power? A right granted by the gods?
Fracture asked, his voice laced with curiosity. Lotus stopped touching the old wound, his gaze drifting towards the panoramic windows and the tormented landscape beyond.
No. The maiden's gift was not supernatural, enhanced, nor anything of the kind.
His voice was tinged with an unexpected note of respect.
She possessed an uncanny ability to never give up, regardless of the circumstances.
He paused, his singular eye flickering back towards his subordinates.
It was almost admirable, being the last to witness her true strength.
He turned again, locking his hands behind his back.
However,
Lotus stated, his voice regaining its cold edge.
her child is precisely that. A child. A boy lost in the delusion that he can rescue everyone. He is but a single soul. There is no army, no united alliance. Only him. He is alone.
He turned back to face them, his gaze unwavering.
And always will be.
Both Solidius and Fracture then bowed their heads in acknowledgement, an unspoken understanding passing between them. Lotus then drifted back towards his levitation point at the room's center.
Eventually, his little heart will give out. We have nothing to fear, nothing to dread. This war against those who left us to rot has already been won.
Lotus declared, his voice resonating with icy conviction. As he began to levitate once more, coiling himself back into a fetal position, he continued.
My empire, my worlds, my universe are already set in stone. To truly believe that a mere child could destabilize what we have achieved is laughable.
He curled himself in tighter, looking like a fetus in the womb, his ruby form radiating an intense heat.
In time, all will be ours. No one can prevent that now.
The god of the glitch beings drifted into an unnatural slumber, leaving Solidius and Fracture to silently retreat from the hall. Though Lotus had no mouth to express it, internally, he was smiling. The thought of the boy's futile struggle brought him a twisted sense of satisfaction. The future, he believed, was already written in its crystals.